That's us live. Hey everyone, thank you for taking the time out of your day to join us. We're going to be going over some of the kind of high level features in Koyfin that we've recently shipped, and we thought this would be a good chance for you to kind of conduct some Q&A and ask some questions. You've already pre-submitted a bunch of them as well, so thank you for that. My name's Connor. I do a bit of partnerships here at Koyfin as well as some other product work. We also have Rob, founder and CEO, here as well. He'll be in the background answering your questions and can pop in at any time as well. So let me share my screen. Cool. So this is kind of the agenda for today. We shouldn't take up too much of your time this afternoon. First thing we're going to do is go over some kind of high-level features that we've recently shipped. We're going to be focusing a lot on the watch list as well. We've recently changed some things there and would like to go over it. I also mentioned you kindly submitted some of your questions before that, so we're going to go over those too. There'll be some light demonstration work in there as well. And then at the end, when we have time, we'll be doing some live Q&A as well. At any time, you're more than welcome to throw some questions into the Q&A box down below, and Rob can answer them or leave some of them for me to answer as well. So without further ado, we'll jump into things. So we're going to start with watch list news and focus on the watch list because we've done a few things there recently. So let me just pull this up. So some of you might already be aware of these features, but we thought we'd go over them. So watch list news is a fairly new item on Koyfin. So here I have a portfolio. This is something that I'm tracking, my personal one. If I go up here and hit the news item, what we do now, instead of just giving you news feeds for specific securities, we allow you to create a custom tailored news feed for the basket of securities that you're looking at. You can see right now here, I've got press releases, I've got analyst price changes, and I've got transcripts coming through. You can edit this and have it formatted however you like. If you want, you can go into news and you can exclude certain items. So if you don't want to see analyst changes in here, they're quite noisy, you can just deselect all of those and you can confirm that. You can remove certain RSS news feeds as well, or other kind of market related data. You can just get rid of news altogether. Sometimes I do that when I'm trying to focus and just reduce the noise and only see stuff coming from the companies themselves, but you'll pull in filings there as well. And you can also edit that. I typically get rid of ownership because I find them to be a bit noisy. Elsewhere in the watch list, we've also added watch list sharing more recently. That's one of our most recent updates. So what that means is Koyfin is a collaborative tool now, essentially. So if I wanted to share this watch list with someone, or if I go over here and have a macro themed watch list I have, this is basically just headline inflation year over year, and then we've got kind of month over month and core inflation down here as well. If I want to share this, I can go up here on the right hand side, click shared, and you can see that I've already shared this with Rob earlier today, and I can change his access from viewer to editor. What this means is essentially, if you think about a Google Sheet, because Rob is an editor, he can come in here and change the column widths, add different columns, change the data around however he sees fit, and that will be reflected in real time on my Koyfin, which is going to be great for teams. And if I change that to viewership, he's going to be able to see my watch list, but he won't be able to make changes. And when he does try to, a little notification will pop up telling him that he doesn't have that as access. And at any time, you can revoke the access of people in your network that have access to your watch list too. One of the reasons that we did this, I guess a few weeks ago when we implemented this, it caused a little bit of confusion, candidly, about the way that we have views set up on Koyfin. We got a few emails about that and a few questions as well pre-submitted. So I just want to cover how you can kind of work around that for now. But the good news is that in a couple of weeks, we'll have a solution that basically brings back that functionality. To you, it might seem the same, but kind of on the back end, behind the scenes, it's slightly different. But in a sense, you'll be able to move your templates along to different watch lists. So for those who don't know, pull back about a month ago, we used to have a concept in Koyfin which was internally called global views. So if I go over back here, I've got this portfolio set up here. It's all laid out how I want it. And if I go in here, I've got other views as well. So here's like analyst ratings and price targets for this watch list. If I wanted to then build a brand new watch list and have this view, previously, every time you create a view for a watch list, it would transfer to all of your other watch lists. Now, when you create a view, you're kind of starting from scratch in a sense. So you have to either rebuild these watch lists or you can copy them over by duplicating it, which I'll show you in just a second. So the workaround, I'm going to show you a workaround, but as I said, we'll have a solution to this coming into the platform very shortly. But for the meantime, if you wanted to replicate this view and you didn't want to have to build it all from scratch, the thing to do would be to start a new watch list. We'll go ahead and create that from scratch. We'll just call it test. And let's say I want to put in the S&P. Handily, I have a list of all the S&P companies with me, but if you wanted to quickly pull that into a watch list, I can just show you how to do that. So go ahead and type in VU, which is an ETF that tracks the S&P. We'll go to holdings. Right here, you've got all the holdings and the attribution. If you can just save that as a watch list if you want, and that will suck in all of those S&P components. Or you can download this as well and get a CSV format with all the tickers. That's what we'd want to do in this circumstance. So you would download that, you'd pull all the tickers, and you go back to your watch list, and we'll go add ticker. Instead of adding those by hand, which would probably take hours, I'm just going to go ahead and paste these all in here. So I've imported them, and we'll click that. Usually just double check that everything is kind of in the right country that you want it to be domiciled in. It will be in this case. So I'm going to go ahead and add those. And in this case, I've got my S&P watch list, but I don't have the view that I want. So the workaround would be to go back to the original watch list. And when you duplicate this, so you can go up here, press the duplicate button. We'll call this test 2. So when you duplicate a watch list, now you're going to duplicate all those views inside that watch list as well. So you'll see that we've got all the same securities in here. It's essentially just made a copy, but I've also got the views. We don't want all these stocks in here, so I'm going to go ahead and just click this button up here and bulk delete them. And we're going to go do that process again. We're going to import, throw in all of our S&P companies in there. We'll add them into the watch list. And now I've essentially got all those same views that I want, that I would ideally like to transfer over, but I have them for this new watch list. So I hope that helps people that are asking, how do I seamlessly transfer views? This is just a workaround for now. As I said, we are working on a solution that will be out soon that will allow you to do this a bit more seamlessly. So yeah, I hope that helps. Other new things that we've shipped recently, one of the things that we're really excited about is ETF valuations. So if I go over here to this ETF watch list, for example, you can see this is just a big list of ETFs that we have in Koyfin, but you can also see that we have valuation multiples in there, EV to EBIT, price to free cash flow, the PEG ratio, all that good stuff. We recently added this, and in a few weeks, you'll have the ability to chart these multiples on a time series basis over time as well, instead of just having them static. So that's going to be exciting. Some other recent features that we've had, we'll unfilter from a ETF for now. We'll go in here, the percentile rank. I'm sure many of you have had a chance to play with this, but just for those who haven't, the percentile rank feature is something that's unique to Koyfin, and essentially what it does is gives you kind of like a burst of information or a high level summary of where a company's trading. We have valuation multiples there. We also have some yields and margins data. And in plain English, what this is telling you is we're filtered on Apple. The forward earnings for Apple right now is about 28 times. Relative to Apple's 10-year history, it trades in the 87th percentile, so quite high. Relative to the sector it trades in the US, it's in the 60th percentile, slightly lower. Relative to the country as a whole, it's in the 82nd. You can toggle this between 10 and 20 years, or you can go regional and global, and we've got some performance data there as well. The interesting thing is, so we've got Apple here, high percentile, multiple. The context this doesn't give you, which is obviously your job to then go and kind of understand. If we come down to margins, you can see the gross margin on a 10-year basis relative to Apple's history is basically at all-time highs. It's pretty high. So you might deduce maybe Apple deserves to trade at a slightly higher multiple because its margin profile has increased so much. That's not a definitive statement. It's for you to assess, but that's kind of information that you can pull from this. And if I was to go and type in PayPal, you'll see that all these sliders are going to be on the polar opposite end of the scale because PayPal is trading like it's going out of business. Again, you could maybe deduce that their margins getting eaten by the rest of the competition, but again, that's not for me to say. The last thing I want to show you, which has been a really big kind of focal point for us for the past few months, is model portfolios. So we built model portfolios kind of with advisors in mind. This was a commonly requested feature from them. So we went out and we built it. And I'll talk more to this in just a second, but model portfolios is really exciting for me personally because it's the foundation of more kind of analytical abilities that we're going to be adding at Koyfin. So for those of you who haven't had a chance to play with it, we'll jump into one. So here is a bunch of model portfolios I've already created. This one is called the Big 7 portfolio, which I'm sure you can guess what's inside it. It's the big tech companies. And if we go to edit portfolio, when you first create a brand new model, you're going to have the chance to add in securities, equities, ETFs, preferreds, and you have an inception date. You can put in some initial value and currency in there as well. And if at any point you want to do a custom rebalance, you can add a new date, and you can change all of these weightings around. You can also add advisor fee information in there as well. You could type that in and change the collection period. And you also have the ability to have no rebalancing period, or you can rebalance, quarterly, monthly, weekly, whatever that might be. For this case, I decided to just throw in an equal weighting for the Big 7 at the end of 2012, and then just see what happens. Don't let it rebalance, just let it organically kind of concentrate. At the end of that period, NVIDIA, for example, which has probably performed the best out of everyone, is about 50% of the portfolio, up from about 14%. You can see that some of Amazon still performed pretty well, but relative to the rest, it's not. So it's now only about 3% of the portfolio. We break down the performance in a chart, and you have a few options here. You can change the time ranges. You can also add rolling returns as well, and you can change the kind of period that that's focused on. If we go to historical returns, we'll break that down on an annual or monthly basis, either on a portfolio level, a benchmark level, and a net level. And then if we go to risk metrics as well, which is my favorite page, we kind of break down how that portfolio would have done over time relative to your benchmark. I've just got the S&P selected here. You can see some top drawdowns information, some stress test, and more importantly, you've got every quantitative metric that you ideally would want: alpha, beta, Sharpe ratios, Sortino's, trainer ratios. So since we launched model portfolios, we've had a lot of really great feedback on it, and we're already at work building a V2. A lot of your pre-submitted questions kind of hit upon things that we're going to be shipping in model portfolios very soon. So that kind of covers like the high level of the newer features. It would have been nice to go over the whole of the Koyfin platform, but for this audience, I'm sure you've already had experience there. But we can go over some other stuff in the Q&A as well if you have specific questions. So I wanted to jump into those pre-submitted Q&A questions because we had some really good ones. I'll just fly through them. Sometimes I'll be jumping back into Koyfin, but the first one, and this is such a commonly requested feature, an Excel plugin. So for those who don't know, that would essentially you would have an Excel sheet, and it would be pulling in live data from Koyfin and updating in real time in a sense. A lot of people ask us, do you have plans to add a plugin? When can we expect that? We would love to have an Excel plugin. The short answer is we can't do it currently due to the existing relationships we have with our data vendors. It's not to say we'll never have one, but we're just kind of prohibited from doing that at the moment, unfortunately. But there are a bunch of areas in Koyfin where you can copy the data into Excel and such like that. So watchlist views, someone asked basically, what's the best way to preserve them and still utilize them with that change? We did go over that just a few minutes ago to show you the demonstration. But as I said before, and a few other times, we'll have a solution to that to restore that level of functionality pretty soon. Model portfolios, we had a lot of questions, so I tried to boil them down into a few of the most pertinent ones. Will we have the ability to create customized benchmarks? Yes. Pretty soon you'll be able to use other models as a customized benchmark. So if you wanted to compare against like a 60/40 portfolio, you could create that model and then use it as a benchmark. Someone asked if we would have sector and asset class breakdowns in the future. Yes. Correct me if I'm wrong, Rob, but I believe this will be in V2. We're going to give you more of a kind of granular insight into what exactly it is you're exposed to in that model. Import portfolios, broker connections, these are all questions that we got asked as well. We do have a CSV import on model portfolios. We didn't originally, but we quickly shipped that because that was a commonly requested item. You can now go into the model portfolio feature and upload a CSV. And we also give you a template to kind of get you right as well. Just while we're talking about this, I wanted to kind of show you a few of the things that we're going to be bringing to the model portfolio feature in the coming months. So we'll jump over here. So custodian integration, this is a commonly requested one. We're currently working on that. Custom benchmarks, fee and dividend yields as well, something we don't have, which we really need to. We'll be shipping that soon. asset class, sectors, country exposures, more of kind of like a holdings X-ray. We're going to be putting that into the product. The ability to compare multiple model portfolios, client proposal tools as well, for auto-generating reports to send to clients, collaboration. So I mentioned earlier, watchlist sharing is now available. We're working on having dashboards become shareable as well, and eventually that will filter out through the rest of the Koyfin platform, whether it's portfolios or other areas, and then custom time series as well. These are all things that we're working on in the near term, but keep your feedback coming in. We'd love to continue to improve the product. I'll just go back to this slide for a second. So model portfolios V2, V3, that's going to be really fun to ship all this stuff. But I guess in our mind, model portfolios is like the foundation of a kind of a richer set of analytics that we want to bring to Koyfin more generally. Model portfolios has a specific use case. Something we're thinking about right now is custom baskets as well. So in a sense, allowing you to create securities inside of Koyfin. So if you wanted to, I guess, create a security that represented the big seven or a particular sector set up the way that you want to set it up, you could do that, and then use that as a benchmark, or chart it, or put it in all the other sections of Koyfin. And then portfolio analytics as well. So slightly different from models, with more of a focus on cost bases and shares and lot entry and that kind of stuff. We're going to be working on that soon. I'm personally involved in that project, and it's super exciting getting to hear feedback of what people want. Something that we've found in the early stages that people, strangely enough, rely on tools like Excel and Google Sheets to track like an aggregation of all their portfolios that they own. And while these products are really great and customizable, there just has to be a better way. And we want to try and build something that kind of fills that gap for people. So economic data. Someone said the only thing I'm specifically like to ask is, what's the best way to search for economic data? The codes are hard to navigate. And then someone else asked about how to look up commodities and indices and such, and this kind of covers that. So we appreciate that some of these tickers for economic data series are quite odd, and the Koyfin search bar does need to be optimized a little bit. So I'll show you an example. If I go in here into Koyfin and I type in UK inflation, for example, we won't spell the right result. So part of that, the onus is on us to kind of build logic that says, oh, if someone types in UK when they actually mean United Kingdom, and I type in inflation here, and spell it correctly. Like, here's the thing you're looking for, United Kingdom inflation rate. But if you type in UK, we won't show you the result. So part of that is on us improving the search function. But sometimes the nomenclature of these economic terms differs. So there's two workarounds that I want to show you. The first one is the fact that we pull in a lot of our data from Fred and then trading economics. So if you're ever interested in finding something and you don't know exactly what it's called, you could Google that and maybe add trading economics or Fred at the end of it. So if I go here, I type in United States Central Bank balance sheet, I don't know how to find that in Koyfin. I'll go here and we can see trading economics is there. Usually the nomenclature in trading economics or Fred, they'll provide a ticker. If you just copy that and just paste it directly into Koyfin, it's going to match up. And there you go. Like, if you were to guess that United States Central Bank balance sheet sticker was this, it would have been pretty hard. So you can find that pretty readily. You can jump into a chart and play around with that. So the other way, if you go to advanced search, we have advanced transcript search, where you can search the entire library of Koyfin transcripts, which is a super fun tool. The security search is equally fun if you're looking for a specific thing. So if I want to look up macroeconomic data series about the fishing industry, for example, all I had to do is type in fish. Ideally, we want macroeconomic data series, so we'll go to the asset category and we'll filter on economic. If I just search there, here's everything we have, 65 pages that has the word fish in it at Koyfin. I want to filter that down to maybe just the United States. Here we have all the data series in Koyfin that have the word fish in it. You can see you've got imports of fish and preparation, you've got GDP, agriculture, forestry, fishing and hunting, all that kind of stuff. Similarly, if I want to type in mortgage, you can see here's some data series that we have on US mortgages, the average 30-year rate. And I can go ahead and click that. and it'll just pull me directly into the chart. Probably don't want moving averages on that, but yeah, here we go. I hope that helps in terms of finding the economic data. Presentations. So we had a couple questions about this. So presentations, firstly, have you ever looked at adding the presentation slides into the filing section of Koyfin, conference calls and analyst days and such, and then also audio transcript library? So I guess the answer to both of these things is we're a pretty small team. A lot of the decisions we have to make around resources and demand. We have had a few people asking for audio transcript libraries and in presentations. It's just not something we've prioritized. Could we do it? Yes. Like, thankfully, a lot of the, I guess, quote unquote issues we have, like things we want to add, it's just a case of acquiring the license and then implementing it. So it's certainly something we could do. It's just not been on the kind of near-term roadmap. Presentations is something we've been talking about internally. Don't have a definitive date on when or if that will be included. We recently added press releases to the platform, so that was good. But yeah, these are things we're thinking about. In terms of audio transcript library, I mean, Rob could correct me, but if I had to hazard a guess, I feel like presentations would probably be something we'd add before we add an audio transcript library. Relative charts, any updates on relative charts? We'd like to add those to our watch list and also be able to put moving averages on them. So for those who don't know, if you want to find a relative chart on Koyfin, you can type in SPY with a colon or a semicolon. I always forget what one that's called. And if you want to compare that to the QQQ, for example, you can just type that in. And here you have a relative chart of those two securities. We'll get rid of that, and you can play around with that over time. Currently, you can't add moving averages to that or kind of statistical bands. We're thinking about adding that in the future. It's just, again, one of those priority things. So I'd probably say it won't be in the near term, but probably a next year thing. So someone asked about baskets, comparing stock performance against sector performance or against a select group of stocks. So the way I interpreted this question, I guess it kind of relates to custom baskets. So if I wanted to create a security that tracks a certain sector or theme the way I want to set it up and compare stock performance against that group of stocks, this kind of relates to that custom baskets thing that we're going to be looking at. This isn't a 2023 thing. This is probably like a mid 2024 thing. We're just in the ideation phase of all this stuff right now, but eventually that is a use case that you'll soon have in Koyfin. So KPIs, segment analysis. For those who don't know, a KPI, I guess you could define it as, in Koyfin currently right now, we'll show you Starbucks' fundamentals, we'll show you the revenue, the EBIT, the debt levels, everything. But what we don't currently show is, Starbucks China revenue or Apple iPhone revenue, like these company-specific KPIs. So the short answer is we haven't been able to do that recently because our, again, relationships with existing data vendors, they I guess don't want to license us that data. The solution candidly is just find someone that will license us that data and then implement it. And this is a pretty hotly demanded one. So we're thinking about sometime next year, hopefully adding this data. So graphing custom formulas, when will we have the custom formulas available on graphs? So I guess this relates to ETF valuations as well. Like sometimes when we add new data series, we'll show you a point in time, so you can have it in a watch list, and then later we'll have a time series version of that, so you can pull it into a chart. If I had to compare the two, I would say ETF valuation time series, so you can chart it. That will probably be a this year thing. I want to say in the next month or so. Custom formulas is a slightly more complicated task, and that's probably going to be like an early next year thing, hopefully. There's a few questions related to screening. So technical screens, any plans to include technical screens similar to IBDs? I don't personally know what kind of screens they have set up. I've just never looked. But after this call, I'll take a look and let you know if you want to reach out. My email is connor.mcneil@koyfin.com. I'd be sure to follow up with you on that one. Someone asked, how can I create a scan that shows all the stocks that are hitting their 52-week high for the day? So there's a few ways to do this, really. I guess you could create a screener, you could create a watch list. or you could create a market scatter. And the term for the data series is this, which is why I add it. It's below 52-week high percentage. So I guess I can show you. We'll go to analytics, we'll go to market scatter. We'll set that up for the S&P. On the Y, we'll go market data, and we'll go below 52-week high. And then on the X, we'll go market data, and we'll go above 52-week low. So here's the S&P, and here's just quickly a visual of, companies approaching their 52-week high, and then, the distance above the 52-week low as well. So we can see that, relative to the start of the year, there's less companies really kind of breaching that 52-week high. You could set it up in this way. Alternatively, you could add these columns to a watch list and see them tick away during the day, see the distance from the 52-week high. I guess more broadly, and you can also screen for this as well, I guess more broadly, I guess my interpretation as well is like, if you want Koyfin to alert you, hey, NVIDIA just surpassed its 52-week high, or hey, 9 stocks in your watch list just surpassed the 52-week high. This kind of relates to a conversation we're having internally as well about alerts. So we're working on that right now, specifically with the mobile app, the Koyfin mobile app. I guess version 1 of that is going to be alerts and push notifications and such for press releases and filings and news, and eventually we're going to have price alerts. And then after that, it's maybe alerts for specific items. Like if you do want someone to alert you when something is approaching the 52-week high, but that's probably going to be more of a next year thing. But we are kind of getting the wheels in motion to have these things set up in Koyfin. So index ratios, I would like to understand financial ratios of the S&P, S&P sales growth, profit margins, etc. So more of like I guess an X-ray view of an index, instead of, we give you a lot of information right now, the valuations, the holdings and such, but giving more of a kind of a granular view on the index. I guess right now, this is probably going to be more of a next year thing. It's not something we have on the immediate roadmap, but it is a data series that we would like to have eventually. So someone asked about benchmarking. What is the simplest way to benchmark and chart metrics of peers? So there's 2 answers to this question, and the way that I interpret it, we'll start with the bottom, I guess. So charting against peers, like if you have a particular setup that you like in a chart, the easiest way to like consistently come back to that is to create a chart template. So let's go to historical graph, and let's filter on something like meta, for example. So you see that every time I'm popping into this chart, it's giving you like a moving average. That's because I've created this template and set it up as like my default template whenever I filter on a security. If we go in here, we've got a bunch of templates in here that I have. So let's scroll down and find an interesting one. So if I go to repurchases, this is just going to break down, Apple's repurchase history, the shares outstanding, and the rate of change over time. I guess the perk of adding a template is that if I ever want to then just change the security, I don't have to rebuild these charts, and I can see that same view. And I guess if you're comparing multiple securities along the same type of thing, I don't know what it is you might have, whether it's like a total return or like an average PE or some kind of metric that you want to compare these peers to. You would then simply add those securities down here. And another benefit of chart templates, of course, if you want to create these templates, I have loads of them personally, you can build kind of personalized dashboards here where you've got all of these charts you're seeing here are all just templates that I've created. You can pull those in and utilize them and have fun with them in that way. More broadly though, how can we simplify the process of benchmarking? That's something we've been talking about as well. Whether it's like a comp table, which would be in a sense like a time series, fundamental data along the top, and then you've got your securities down here on the rows. And if you want to just add, I don't know, food stocks, Starbucks, Chipotle, and you want to like compare the margins, you could in a sense do that in a watch list today. But I think a lot of people, what they want is like a time series of data. So maybe revenue going back. I guess the short answer is we're, again, kind of putting the wheels in motion to build comp tables eventually. I don't think it will be a 2023 thing. I think it will probably be a next year thing because we want to get it right. And in my mind, we'd allow people to have a template of a comp table they want to share or view and then just simply add their securities into it. And we're also doing the work in terms of, on the back end, our databases as well, and kind of configuring how we can pull out those fundamental data sets and allow you to put them in watch lists. But I do think pretty soon, more in the near term, there will be some data sets that you can have a time series of in a watch list, such as revenue, and a few valuation multiples as well, similar to what you might see in a financial analysis template. I guess the short answer is we're working on that, and we do want to have benchmarking and comp tables in Koyfin pretty soon. We'll rattle through a few of these last ones before we jump into the Q&A questions that I've ignored and forgot about up until now, but I'm sure Rob's been answering them. So backtesting, this kind of boils down to, I guess, when I was talking about model portfolios being the foundation of more analytical capabilities you want in Koyfin, backtesting is certainly one of those use cases that we've been thinking about. I'll be candid and say that like model portfolios and improving that is obviously the focus, and then like a more robust portfolio analytics feature, and then custom baskets is probably coming on from model portfolios, and probably slightly later down the line is when we start thinking about stuff like backtesting. There's certain data series that you need to acquire to be a proficient backtesting tool, such as delisted securities, for example, to remove survivorship bias. That's super important with backtesting. So yeah, it's something we're thinking about. It's not in the near term, but ideally we'd like to have it one day. And then I guess the last part of that question was, why do company financials only go back to 2013, 10 years? That kind of just relates to the agreements that we have with data license vendors right now on a time series basis. In like the financial analysis templates, we can only show you going back 10 years. There's not much we can do to change that right now. Might not be forever, but that's the situation we have right now. Time series watch lists, we kind of spoke about that. I don't candidly know if it will be in a watch list or it will be in a separate area where you can like build that dashboard. I guess the way to frame it is, right now you can see a time series of fundamental data in financial analysis templates, but it's for a single security. You can't then overlap multiple securities. In a watch list, you can see multiple securities, and you've got time series of price return data, and you've got margins and all the other column headers that you want. But there is a demand for kind of like a combination of those two things, where you can have time series fundamental data, but with multiple securities, which in other words is essentially a comp table. So again, we are thinking about that. Ranking stocks, is it possible to add rank stocks based on multiples? The short answer is no. The slightly longer answer is you could essentially do this. Like, there are workarounds to do this. You could simply, if you're doing a screen, for example, and you spit out an output based on like price to free cash flow, you could just sort by that metric, and you'd have the best to the worst at the bottom. You could alternatively kind of download that data set or the screening output and then put it in Excel and rank them that way. I've tried this myself, because the Joel Greenblatt magic formula is essentially two metrics, and you rank them and then add the rank scores together. And then there's also a demand for, if you wanted like a qualitative conviction score, I guess, for companies, and you wanted to see how that changed, or if you're in a team, for example, of 10 people, and each person submits a score, and then you have like an aggregate view. These are all like similar use cases for ranking securities in Koyfin as well. But again, it's something we're thinking about, but it's not on the kind of immediate term roadmap. Someone asked if we can lay out billing plans. I think the best thing to do, candidly, is to just type in Koyfin pricing in Google or whatever search provider you use. The first thing you see is going to be the pricing page. We break out each of the pricing plans and what you get in each one. And then just below that page, there's also a full comparison where we get really granular, and we break down exactly what's in each one, and what's missing and the limitations in some of them. And then we also explain each of the features, like model portfolios. All that data is there. But if you do want to reach out, I'd be happy to just kind of walk you through it as well. Dashboard design, share the best practices for dashboard design. So I'll quickly hop back in and just show you a few examples. But I am a pretty active dashboard user. So for those who don't know, market dashboards are kind of templates that we give you to give you some inspiration and also information about kind of global macro. You've got factors, yields, IPOs, calendars, commodities, all that good stuff. My dashboards is where you can essentially build your own dashboard. So if we go to new here, go blank template, you have a bunch of components, and what you can add in there is we utilize the watch list. So if you're building watch lists, like you can throw them in here, scatter plots, news feeds, and charts as well. So if I take a watch list here, we can just add that in. And if I had a component, I might want a news feed for that. And we give you intraday, performance, and historical graph templates. Again, you can move those around. If I click on Google, for example, it's going to give me a price chart. These are nice, but if you really want to up your dashboard game, what I would suggest is building templates. Let's go revenue and gross profit. So you can have those kind of views that you want to see for these watch lists, and you can compare them all. For inspiration purposes, I guess I'll walk you through a few of the ones that I built. So this is, we'll come to this one last actually, because it's a bit more nuanced, but this is an ETF view. So here's a watch list with a bunch of ETFs in it. Here's the premium and discount to NAV. Here's the assets under management, and here's the cumulative flow. And you can kind of change that year to date if you want. Sure, if you went TLT, if it's in here somewhere, you'd see a lot of inflows this year. This is more of like a portfolio-centric dashboard. So here is a portfolio. Here's some EPS, some PE versus the mean, some revenue and gross profit, cash conversion cycle. Every time that I flick through these securities, it's going to change the view of all these charts because that's how I want it set up. It's a slightly different version of that. Same watch list, but with more focus on revenue estimates going forward, balance sheet items, margin breakdown, some growth metrics there, and some forward earnings multiples. This is a pretty simple one. It's just a portfolio, and every time that you add an extra security to it, it's going to chuck on a year-to-date return chart and see how everything is compared. This is a similar view, but with more of a focus on news. So I have a scatter plot up here, and you can kind of edit that in within the dashboard and add whatever columns you want. We have a big news feed coming, sprawling down the middle, and then we have an intraday and a year-to-date performance chart. But it doesn't just have to be securities or portfolio kind of views. You can create macro dashboards as well. So if you remember earlier, I showed you that inflation watch list. I've just basically pulled that into this dashboard. I've put a nice chart here on the right-hand side, so I can quickly and seamlessly just compare, headline inflation rates for a bunch of different countries and do that seamlessly. I'm not technically minded, so I don't really have a clue what stochastics actually mean. I have a vague idea of what RSI means, but if you want to build some kind of template that's your preferred technical view, you can create a template for that, have it set up here so that, again, every time you flick through, you've got an intraday chart, and we are still intraday, so that'll be ticking away in real time. And you've got, your preferred view for all the securities, so you can just kind of flick through them. And lastly, second lastly, you can create more kind of obscure views as well. So this one is a macro view, and what you have up here is the US credit card default rate and the year-over-year change. So you see it spiking a little bit recently, but relative to the GFC era, it's not crazy. Down here, you've got inflation rates in a watch list. You've got unemployment claims in the US and then continuing claims. And this is all the US sectors and how they're doing, and I can change them however I want to see it. So you see that some of these watch lists here are kind of squished. That's by design. I think usually when you have a watch list in your mind, you're thinking, I want to see everything in that watch list. But sometimes if you set up a view where you only have one or two things in that watch list specifically for a dashboard, you can just hide them away if you have them selected. So if I go ahead and delete this news tab here, for example, and pull this down, you'll see that I've got a bunch of securities in here. It's just a watch list, but I don't really need them taking up all that space because this watch list, which is a D watch list, only communicates with this one chart here, which is a D chart, and the same for all of these other ones, A, B, and C. But because I've already selected the security that I want to show up on this chart, which is Lululemon, and I never want to change that, I'm just going to kind of push that so I have more space to add a news feed in here. So you really can get a bit creative with these dashboards. But I think in terms of best practices, set up watch lists, set up chart templates, and then the rest is really just up to you. Get a bit creative. Yeah. So a few last questions here. Glossary, definitions and glossary. We've got data series backlog. When is ROIC going to be released? And then this last question here. So the data series backlog refers to, we get asked quite a lot, hey, can we have ROIC? Can we have return on incremental invested capital? Can we have return on capital employed? We currently have a big list or a ticket of all these things that people have been asking. And in the next sometime this year, we're going to get around to just kind of like hammering through all of those. We have just been a bit focused on building model portfolios and having that for everyone. But now that that's kind of finished, we have a bit more resources to focus on stuff like this. So ROIC should be in the platform pretty soon. That's probably the most commonly requested one. So I've been working on that personally, and it looks great. Glossary definitions, hovering over ratio. So I guess we didn't announce it, but we do have a glossary now. So if you go to Koyfin and if you go to Google and type in Koyfin Dictionary, we have a Koyfin data dictionary. So we will break down all the different terms here. So if I'm interested in PE, we show it how it's calculated on CapIQ, which is where we're sucking the data in from, and we'll break that down for you. And I guess the hover state. So this is a great solution for now. You literally do have those definitions here. If there's ever anything you want us to define that's missing, just let us know. We'll add it. In the future, in an ideal kind of world, we would have a hover state. So if this is a metric that I'm interested in, I don't know what real estate is. Let's pull out a good example actually. Let's go to watch lists. If I don't know what PE is, if I could hover over that, it might just say, this is how it's calculated, or it might take you somewhere where they can show you where it's calculated. But hover state is essentially so you can just read it inside the platform. That's probably a longer term project and a bigger implementation, but that would be really nice to have in the platform one day. And someone asked about a specific dashboard for 3 to 5 year growth rates, like revenue, EPS, share count, etc. Yeah, I guess the best way to answer that question would be, do I have anything set up for that? No, so we'll just create one. Cool, so let's get started from scratch. Let's just add a couple tickers. Go Tesla, we'll go NVIDIA, Apple, cool. So we do have all that data. So this is a brand new watch list from scratch. We give you a bunch of column headers there. I don't want any of these, so I'm going to go ahead and delete them. If you want to find something that's like a CAGR rate, the best way to do that would just be to type in CAGR or the specific CAGR that you want. But on a trailing basis here, we can see we have 3-year annual CAGR, we have 5-year annual CAGR. When I've added those, it's going to give me that data there. I can rename it 3-year CAGR revenue if I want. And you can build out a watch list with that view pretty easily with all these columns. We have all that data available. And I guess the last thing before I jump into the Q&A, if there's anything that's missing or you want like insight into a particular area of Koyfin, whether it be charting, model portfolios, using the analyst estimates tab, we've been a lot more active on YouTube recently, just kind of shipping informational videos about these features. And more recently, we added a brand new refreshed Koyfin demo for 2023, which includes everything up until model portfolios. Just be clear that is included in the demo. So yeah, it's worth checking those out. And if at any time you want to reach out to me directly, I shared my email. I'm always more than happy to kind of take a call with you or send you a video and show you how to do something. But yeah, I'll go ahead and stop sharing and we'll jump into the Q&A. Do you have or can you add a rule of 40 metric? So yeah, this has been requested a lot, particularly with SaaS investors. There's really specific metrics like net retention rates and all that kind of stuff. KPIs. I guess this kind of does boil down to like the KPI question, like do we have those? Can we get those? And the answer is kind of similar. It's like we just have to find someone where we can license that data, implement it, add it. So hopefully at some point next year, every SaaS investor will be able to just pick those data sets from Koyfin, and they don't have to like go into the filings and calculate them themselves or pull them. So the short answer is,
Hey Connor, can you just show how to do a custom formula maybe of rule of 40 if I give you that definition? Because I think in a watch list.
Sure. Yeah, let me show my screen again. I don't know the definition of rule of 40, but we can try it.
Yeah, so it's the margin. It's the growth rate and the margin. So growth rate plus margin.
The growth rate of what and the margin of what?
You have to I think you can pick whatever you want, but I think most people do revenue growth, and then profit margin. Sorry, that should have been.
Okay. Okay, so you just add them together?
I think that's the rule of 40. So if those two things add to above 40, that's the rule of 40.
Okay, cool. Let me see here. So again, if anyone's watching and I'm just butchering the rule of 40, apologies, but this will be a good demonstration of how you can just kind of create anything that you want in Koyfin. So the data sets we have is 1 year CAGR annual. So it's going to be like, this could be the revenue growth and then gross margin, I guess. Oops, and gross margin. So like here is the data series. For the sake of this, I'll just say trailing. Cool, so, oops, where did revenue go? Cool, so we've got the 1 year revenue growth rate. These are the two things that we want. If I wanted to create a custom formula to express these being added together, we'll go into the column selection. We've got custom formulas and columns here. We have a bunch of options. You can add like color labels, like you saw in my portfolios watch list, dates, notes, so you can type out text. And the most commonly used one is formula. So let's call this rule of 40. I don't know why that's in caps. Let's go add series. So we just want those two data series, revenue 1 year. And then we want the gross profit margin. And then we have a data series, and all we have to do is express those. So we want to add A to B. And then the display format, this would, I'm assuming it's a percentage, or is it a number? Do you know?
It's a percentage, yeah.
Okay, percentage. So we've got percentage. Let's go ahead and create that column. We'll click rule of 40. We'll let that load for a second. Let's refresh the page. Cool. So there we have rule of 40. Yeah, so we can see that Apple, Tesla, NVIDIA, I don't know if the idea is it's supposed to be over 40, but whatever that is, we've created that formula. You can get really creative here. Like if you want to show stock-based comp as a percentage of revenue, you can just quickly whip that up. If you wanted to times revenue by 5,000, I don't know why you'd want to do that, but you can do that as well. It's really flexible. And similar to kind of how views are set up in watch lists, your custom formulas are per watch list. So if you want to transfer those custom formulas along, you could duplicate it and then build it that way that I showed you earlier. So let's see, Q&A. Yeah, seems like we have no other Q&A questions here. I'll give you guys a minute to, if you want to submit any other questions, feel free to add them into the chat now. I can see that Rob's already answered a bunch of them. So I'll just give you a minute there. Otherwise, I'm happy to let everyone kind of get on with the day, but just wanted to take the time to thank everyone for listening. I hope you learned a lot. You're more than welcome to follow up with me and Rob if you have additional questions. I can see there's a question there. So Michael asked, will iPad app have functionality or will it be tied to desktop? So iPad is an interesting one. Thank you, David. iPad's an interesting one. So mobile / iPad is like, I guess some call it a companion app, but some of the stuff that we're bringing to mobile pretty soon is really kind of, I mean, it's never going to be quite on parity with web because web is really robust. But some really exciting things we're doing with watch lists, like having a detailed view in mobile. But in mobile, I guess your preference is to use the mobile because it's a smaller screen and it's optimized for that. iPad is slightly different depending on the size of the iPad you have. You can use the web version of Koyfin in a slightly larger iPad, and it actually works really great. Whereas the iPad app version will be similar to the mobile experience. But if you do have an iPad, I would recommend checking out the web version, just Googling Koyfin and signing in. I don't want to hate on the Koyfin iPad app, but like I do think the web version of Koyfin is better on an iPad. Whereas if you're on a mobile, you're better to choose the mobile application. So in terms of functionality, which was your actual question, I think there's always going to be, at least for the next few years, there's always going to be this slight catch up for mobile and iPad as far as the kind of full data set of the Koyfin web platform is concerned. it's hard to pack so much stuff into a mobile application, and the web version is just so robust. So there'll be some catch up, but we're working really hard to kind of add more functionality into those apps. Can we? Oh, someone answered that question. Cool. Is there a browser that you optimize to? Michael asks. I don't know the answer to that question. Rob, do you know if we optimize the iPad/mobile to a specific browser?
I think if you use Safari on iPad, we just assume everyone uses Safari because that's default. And if you use Chrome, if there's any issues, I think Chrome might be a little bit better. But both of those browsers, we don't technically support it, so it's a little bit of a backdoor kind of support. And so certain things you might do, the containers might overlap or bleed into each other. But we do have a lot of users that use the iPad app and the browser. And so we've heard pretty good feedback. And so Safari and Chrome would be the two browsers that I'd recommend.
Awesome. Cool. We've got another question coming in. Would we be able to use historic data in custom formula? Great job, gentlemen. I guess right now the answer to that question is no, but that's partly what I talked about with like financial analysis templates is the place for time series fundamental data. Watchlist currently we don't have time series fundamental data. I don't want to bore you, but like the short answer is like it's the way that our kind of databases are set up and how we pull data from each of those. We are working on a solution to that to eventually add time series historic fundamental data to watchlist, and we will have a few specific ones like revenue that I mentioned earlier that you can have in watchlist soon, eventually like have the whole kind of spectrum of fundamental data. But the short answer to the question is you can't do that right now, but I would imagine that when we have that time series fundamental data in a watchlist, you could build a custom formula around historic years of that fundamental data. Cool. It looks like we don't have any other questions unless they fly in just as I try to close up. But yeah, otherwise, really appreciate everyone taking the time to listen to us today. I hope it's helped. If at any point you do want to follow up with me or Rob, you're more than welcome to. We're always kind of happy. Well, Rob's kind of busier, so I'm always happy to jump on a call and walk you through things. But yeah, thank you for being Koyfin users and showing interest, and we'll speak again soon.